Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call this video Unequal Mental Illness. So you make sure you look for this video, Unequal Mental Illness. Now, that being said, I'm going to incorporate what the expert said last week about the mass shooters. And I'm going to incorporate Maurice Hill's name into what was said. Now, let's start with Trump. Trump said the mass shootings were mental illness. So Maurice Hill, that did the shooting in Philadelphia, according to Trump, has mental illness. He has mental illness. Now, there were some people that didn't agree with Trump and said that mass shootings had nothing to do with mental illness. But I'd say, if it is good enough for the three mass shooters a week ago, it's good enough for Maurice Hill. Maurice Hill is a product of mental illness. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it was said that it was the video games that drove people to do these mass shootings. So I would imagine that Maurice Hill probably had a lot of video games in that Philly house. Yes, y'all. He probably had all kinds of games in there. And, we need to focus, instead of focusing on what Maurice Hill did, we need to focus on the root cause of the mental illness behind why he did it. We need to focus on that. Mental health perpetuates mass shootings. And Trump said that, he has to blame the mass shootings on mental health. So Maurice Hill definitely has mental health. And I hope in the reporting that they find pictures of Maurice Hill smiling, find some childhood pictures of him playing, or a couple of baby pictures of him to show the public. I mean, you should see how black his hair was back then. And there's a lot of undiagnosed mentally ill people just like Maurice Hill out here, y'all. Just like the expert said last week when they were talking about El Paso and Dayton. Trump said all week long, it's a mental illness problem. So Maurice Hill has mental issues. Mentally ill. Now, the reality is there's a lot of mentally ill people walking around in America. And it is the root cause to why we are seeing shootings. And there's evidence that Maurice Hill had a very tough life. He had a rap sheet, but he was never really charged with a lot of things. So, that being said, he was a troubled man that needed help. He was crying for help. That's why he picked up that high-powered rifle and started shooting, because it was a cry for help that was ignored largely by law enforcement, judges, police, everybody. Everybody ignored the signs that were there. The signs were there. Everybody ignored the signs. And that's why Maurice Hill was able to pick that rifle up and shoot. Ladies and gentlemen, mental illness I'm really broken up about mental illness, y'all. Give me a moment. I gotta pause. Now, experts say don't blame all of the gun violence on mental illness, but I have to do that, y'all. I have to do it because if we have three mass shooters from last week and all we did was talk about mental illness, we have to talk about mental illness all this week when it comes down to Maurice Hill. We have to spend the entire week talking about mental illness because it is a huge problem in America. And I want y'all to think about allowing your kids to play video games. Oh, y'all, don't forget the pot. Pot has been linked to mass shootings. So Maurice Hill was probably Maurice Hill was probably doing pot. You know, this was the article that came out last week, y'all, in the New York Post linking pot to to mass shootings. Pot, yes, yes, it was the pot. It was the video games. He had a tough life. He had a hard time in school. Yes, all of those things. It's the it's the Democrats' fault. It's the Democrats' fault. That's right. It's the Democrats' fault because they were holding Trump responsible for the rhetoric he was talking. They are responsible for why Maurice Hill did all that shooting. Yes, it's Mitch McConnell's fault. It's Mitch McConnell's fault because he's been obstructing legislation for gun control forever now. It's Mitch McConnell's fault. Moscow Mitch is to blame. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are a country on edge, even more, you know, and I don't know, the deadliest shooters, do they come from fatherless homes? That came up last week too. Did these shooters come from fatherless homes? That would have put Maurice Hill at a disadvantage too, on top of all of his mental illness. Now, could the situation with Maurice Hill have been prevented? Did law enforcement do everything they could to prevent that situation from going out of control when they arrived on the scene? Ladies and gentlemen, it's hard for someone with mental illness to take responsibility. It's hard. And the mental health system is largely ignored in America. And you have to just go back to what Trump was saying, and the nation just must condemn those that don't believe this was mental illness. We must condemn those people, ladies and gentlemen. We must condemn all of the people that didn't use WIE last week, but they want to use BIE this week over Maurice Hill. So we must condemn all of those people because the root cause to that shooting last night was mental illness, a tough upbringing, video games, pot. Okay, it was all of those things that drove Maurice Hill. And, we just need better background check for guns. We need to, um, show more compassion for people like Maurice Hill, just like the other shooters. Just show compassion. And, I guess at the end of the day, it's a good thing that Maurice Hill did not kill anyone. Like, there were deaths in the other three shootings last week. They were fatalities. These cops at least got to live another day to see their families. Please tell me what you think of this video, ladies and gentlemen. Mental illness is such a serious thing in America, and we just simply can't ignore the inevitable, which is mental illness. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I will see you on the next video. Peace, family.